Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to Newcastle Fast FM here Monday night on the Baker Broadcast Show. And our show this evening, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, building on the last few weeks, we've been discussing something that has really brought out a huge response from our viewers and our listeners. And we thank you, Jazakallah khair, for remaining engaged and involved in the discussions. We've been discussing domestic violence, and as you know, we've been exploring that over the last 3 weeks. And last week we were talking about the convert's conundrum, about sisters specifically and especially who become Muslim and the sort of persecution they suffer from not having the support and the backup that is necessary and that should be mandatory, really, for them in our deen, as well as within our society and our community. And so we're going to continue this discussion. It gives me great pleasure to introduce to us, to you all, inshallah, very special Sister Haniya. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Jazakallah khair.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Jazakallah khair for joining us, Sister Haniya. Sister Haniya is, mashallah, a Revert sister who's, mashallah, been a Muslim now for 12 years. She is from, well, she lives currently in Birmingham and has supported many great projects. Inshallah, she works with the likes of MEND and has her own particular project called Revert Voices, about giving a voice to Revert sisters, inshallah, and being able to express their own challenges, difficulties, and whatever they have been through, inshallah, to find that support network around them. And mashallah, Sister Haniya has joined us at a very timely occasion, inshallah, in this discussion. And with that introduction, I'd also like to say assalamu alaikum to Dr. Abdul Haqq. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Alhamdulillah, it's great to have you both, inshallah ta'ala, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put barakah and blessings in it. We are starting a few minutes over, and again, my sincere apologies for that. And inshallah ta'ala, we want to get into this discussion about looking at what is a time to listen. That, you know, our sisters who come into this deen, the difficulties that they go through, and inshallah, I'd like to pass it over to you, Dr. Abdul Haqq, if you want to add anything before we begin, inshallah.
Jazakallah khair. I'd like to welcome our sister Haniya, mashallah, tabarakallah, who I would say, and I don't have many inspirations other than the ones that we all have, but in meeting with her and our brother Abdul Green was the one who connected us, and the webinar that our sister hosted was very inspiring. And she threw a challenge to me, a respectable challenge, saying that the things she was hearing me describe of how we used to deal with things in my community as chairman of Brixton community, and how engaged we were and committed to the sisters, which some of us are remotely to an extent now. She said, we need that back. We need to revive that. And that made me think, okay, what more can be done? And as you know, on this show, I've kept it brewing with you and discussing this. And also some other sisters came forward very recently, started a program called Here to Hear, in which they get access to advise sisters, to give sisters a platform to speak as well. And in the background, there's me and brothers who I can refer to help at whatever level of engagement is required by those sisters. And alongside that, Sister Haniya and I have been talking about working alongside each other in other projects, including her Revert Voices project. So I think that it's only apt now that brothers have got to take not a backseat, but so many times in the media, so many times in communities, it's brothers' voices that are speaking about sisters' issues. And we've got inspirational sisters like Sister Haniya and many others. Their voices, we should be saying, hold on, let me step to the side. Here's a sister who can verbalize and actualize and communicate to you the sisters' issues. And we've got to really, I think, bring down that level of patriarchy, and those who are confusing that with misogyny, eliminating misogyny completely and saying, no, that should not be standing in place of how we interact with our sisters, inshallah. So without further ado, I would ask Sister Haniya to share with us what you've been doing, what we can do more of and less of, Sister Haniya, inshallah.
Jazakallah khair, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. I think to start with, it's really refreshing and alhamdulillah gives hope that brothers are actually talking about this. Because that's something that we do need in our community. We need the brothers actually to recognize what's going on and to step up and start supporting the sisters. So first of all, Jazakallah khair for even having this initiative and inviting me on. Personally, what am I doing right now? I sort of take each day as it comes, and opportunities have sort of fallen before me. And alhamdulillah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed me in that I've managed to create a platform for Reverts to literally express their voices, their feelings. And that was through MEND, Muslim Engagement and Development. I began working with them about 2 years ago. And the reason why I got to MEND in the first place was actually because I sent them a really angry email saying, okay, you tackle Islamophobia. That's good. Alhamdulillah, you do that. But what about the Islamophobia that reverts face every single day? What about that? Who's helping reverts, and how are you tackling that? Because, for reverts, we are completely isolated. Some of us are. And what happens is we face Islamophobia every single day from our families that reject us, our communities that reject us, the cities that, our homeland that we can't go to anymore, where we were born and raised. We lose our support network. We have the Islamophobia from our work colleagues that all of a sudden, oh, you're in a hijab, what's going on? You've become extreme. And, we hear those labels often, all the time, but from people that we know and love. You're an extremist, you're a terrorist, you've been brainwashed, you're in a cult. All these labels, we're actually hearing of people that we love and whose love we seek and whose validation we may seek and whose comfort we have grown up to seek. So I suppose it was like, come on, men, what are you doing? And alhamdulillah, they said to me, well, actually, we never thought about that. We didn't know this existed, so we're not doing anything, but whatever you want to do, we'll support you. And that's where it began. And alhamdulillah, I had some experience with the Green Lane Masjid, a fantastic masjid. We've also supported reverts for a long time now, which is where I took my shahada as well and met a lot of reverts there. So alhamdulillah.
Jazakallah khair. I think that gives us a good foundation on kind of what it is. Just to quickly, assalamu alaikum to all of you. I didn't catch all of the names, but Lala Rukh, Rasha, Asma, Ibtisham, assalamu alaikum to all of you, inshallah. Floating Man, welcome back and thank you for tuning in, inshallah. So just as in the sort of way we wanted to, just exploring this discussion a bit further, you wrote this angry email to MEND because of a frustration. Something was happening and you're seeing all this other stuff and you're sort of saying, actually, well, what about me? I'm feeling very isolated and I need something to support. And alhamdulillah, MEND have given you that space and that platform. So once you set up, this particular project, what was the sort of the first bits that you found, or what was your thinking in the sense of what your experience is going to be like setting it up?
So I think initially one of the reasons I did it, I don't often talk about my personal circumstances, but I was in a very, very dark place. I was going through a lot at the time. And to be honest, I needed my father. I didn't have any male figure whatsoever. No brother, no uncle, no cousin, no wali, no nothing. And I wanted my father and I didn't have him. And every time I tried to get close to him, something in the media would come out about Muslims. And I felt like even if I took a tiny step forward, I'd be thrown a million steps back. So I think maybe this is something we can pick up on later, the need for a female, that longing that she has for that male figure in her life. I don't think there might be some feminists out there that say, we disagree. But from my experience and from the experience of many sisters that I know, we need this male figure because that's, it might be in certain situations, whether it's with a husband or, a father-in-law, whatever, it takes another man to approach another man. But alhamdulillah, the project with Revert Voice is actually new. So I actually only begun it a couple of months ago. And so far, we've had a webinar with Brother Abdul Haqq, Alhamdulillah, Abdul Rahim Green, Hamza Georges, Lauren Booth, and Alia Rayan from Solace. And it was sort of a launch webinar where we discussed the common problems that reverts face, the Islamophobia that they face, and how to tackle it. So we had some fantastic input from all our amazing speakers. And I think the common thing was step up, do something, have a voice. But also we recognize that more work needs to be done by brothers in our community to support revert sisters. And, you know, to come together and actually talk about the problem a bit more and try to come up with solutions. To be honest with you, like I said, day by day. So whatever solutions might come from this webinar in particular, then we take it on board, inshallah.
Inshallah, mashallah, tabarakallah, alhamdulillah. Assalamu alaikum to Bilal as well, inshallah. Jazakallah khair. Dr. Abdul Haqq.
Mashallah, I think that was groundbreaking, what Sister Haniya arranged with the brothers and sisters that she mentioned. The input was really, really insightful. And I think that what we need to look at, we have to take things beyond discussion. There are sisters, converts, reverts who really are in need, and I'm really glad that Sister Haniya mentioned that relationship with men, and as men we need to mention that relationship with sisters, and beyond the mother-son relationship, which we know is sacrosanct in the amongst the Muslim communities. But when convert sisters come in, wa alaikum salam, Sister Sabrina, mashallah, tabarakallah, when convert sisters come in, okay, they've disconnected so much of their former life visibly as well. Some of us men, we could hide our identity if we need to. We can suppress it. When I became Muslim, I was in the legal profession, and I used to sneak off to the farthest part of the building and pray. I would take my lunch break extra long and go to the mosque for Jummah. And I wouldn't say anything about my conversion, my reversion to Islam. It was at the time of the Gulf War, not because of that, but just before. So when that broke out, I thought, I can't say anything. But had I been a sister, and I'm not talking trans or anything, alhamdulillah, but had it been the other way round, and I had to show my physical embrace of the religion, sister couldn't do anything that I did. Sneak off to pray. What? It's there. It's straight in front of you. The garment has changed, the mixing or the level of free mixing has changed for the sister in that particular instance, because she understands that hijab, and for the men, but for the women, the hijab is not just covering, it's a way of a code and a conduct that becomes more visible amongst the sister that before it does with the men. So we've got to move beyond this, just the discussions. And we've really got to be there to support sisters. Like, for example, I remember in the early days, and straight after 9/11, and we used to see some sisters, and we could see the fear. It was palpable when they were in the streets and they were walking and everything like that. And I said to brothers, like, okay, we know we can wear a thobe, we don't have to wear a thobe. Whatever our attire was, we made it clear to the sister, even if it's coming up close, walking past, Assalamu alaikum rahmatullah, are you okay? So she knew there is a Muslim presence here. And others could see there was that Muslim presence in the way that there was a protectiveness or an awareness that there was a Muslim sister in a public space, and people knew there are Muslim men in that public space as well. That's the minimal steps that can be taken. The greater steps have got to be when the sister is in grief or grievance, she has a grievance, it needs to be listened to and she needs to be supported. Because there are predators amongst the Muslim communities, be they second, third generation Muslims, be they converts who are coming in with a psychology of how they used to be predators before they were Muslims, looking at women, nightclubs, everything like that, seeking out the vulnerable. And with Muslim convert women, that happens to be a lot more transparent now, because they can see there is no engagement with any male spouse or family member or whatever. So they can come like a wolf in sheep clothing. The sister then sees this person's a convert, or this person understands my plight, I'm going to open up to him. They do, and they end up being disappointed, at least abused at most. If and when those things happen, there needs to be brothers who step up, not just to support the sister, but to confront those who are doing it, even if it's on a community level.
Sister Haniya.
Yeah, it's true. I feel that the thing with you touched, brother, on DV at most. It's really common, unfortunately. The DV is actually very, very common. And I've ran events now about, so I've done like emotional abuse, rising from emotional abuse. I've done healing through writing, so poetry and prose. So I've tried to do these events. And when I do them, I speak to the sisters, and some of them say, because I open up to non-reverts as well, because I think, you know, it should be a platform where reverts meet, you know, born Muslims as well, so that they can integrate within the community. But what I sometimes get is, oh, but it's not just reverts. You know, we all have like DV problems. It's not just reverts. So why are you doing an event and advertising it for reverts? And my answer is, well, first of all, I invite everyone. It's not just for reverts, it's for everyone. But the point is, when a revert goes through DV, she's on her own. And a born Muslim sister, you know, as tough as it is for her, and it is, there will be at least one family member supporting her, and that can make the world of a difference. Whereas with reverts, there's nobody, there's no one to turn to, and it's very isolating, it's very scary, it's very, you know, you feel so intimidated in your own home, and then knowing that there's no one to turn to or talk to, and if you were to leave that person, where would you go? Who's going to help you? Because you don't have family. So there's this, the problem is exactly the same, but just the situation slightly different. But the thing with DV, I find that it's very prominent amongst revert sisters, because and this is my personal opinion, and having spoken to, you know, I spoke to a brother who runs a marriage, a matrimonial service, and he said the amount of times I get brothers phoning me asking for reverts. I said, why is that? And he said, you know what? He goes, there's so many, they ask for reverts because they know the revert doesn't come with baggage, doesn't come with family. And so they just have her. And that's, you know, someone who's just in the field of a matrimony service. He's been in the field for many, many years, and it's a very famous one as well. You'll all know it if I gave the name. And then, you know, there's, you know, I've spoken to, like, you know, my own sort of counselor and other counselors, and they say that, look, when a man is with a woman and he knows that there's no backup for her and it's just her on her own, you know, no matter how strong that man is, there's an element of, I can do whatever I want to this sister. And it takes an incredible God-fearing man not to resort to DV, whether it's emotional, psychological, financial, or the rest of it. And that's something that I think...
Just for the benefit of our audience, DV, domestic violence. Yes?
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry, Sister.
So, yeah, it comes in several forms. You know, I'm not just talking about beating someone black and blue here. You know, sometimes it's a case of, you know, whether you get slapped or dragged off on the floor or something, but you're not bruised, so it can't be DV, you know? But
isn't that, Sister Haniya? I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
And I don't know the terminology, but that is still DV. That's still domestic violence. That's still abuse.
Yeah. But we don't recognize it. And the thing with reverts as well, we have this mentality. We're very textbook Islam. We've given up our culture. We've given up our family. We've given up everything. And, you know, we're like a blank slate. So when we learn Islam, we learn it as it is, from the book. So when we hear a hadith, we're going to take it literally. When we hear the hadith of Ibrahim alayhi salam visiting his son, and the wife complaining on the doorstep, and he says, you know, change your doorstep, and the second wife, the next one's, you know, is good and doesn't complain about her husband. You know, the amount of times I've heard that hadith, and sisters like, you know, oh, we can't talk bad, we can't say anything, can't say anything. And then it goes hidden. And they're not expressing it. Or, you know, when it comes to sexual abuse and the man says, you must, otherwise you're going to be cursed by the angels all night.
Can I touch upon that quickly? Because I think it's a very important thing. And I want to make this clear for brothers very, very clearly. I've not mentioned this before. That narration that is being mentioned there, okay, where brothers bring that, and then there's this statement, there's no rape in Islam, okay? And I want to say, as a convert, that for me is a heinous, disgusting statement that's rejected. And I want to remind them of one thing, okay? That hadith by default that Sister Haniya is mentioning, that the woman who doesn't answer to her husband, the angels curse her in the night. That is an authentic narration. But does that not prove by default that the woman can say no? Okay, that's by default showing the woman can say no. So there's no rape in. They cannot say there's no rape in Islam. Yes, there is. Okay. Yes, let's be really, really clear. Yes, there is. And any brother who wants to come and say no, that's not the case, your mindset needs to be reset, and you need to check what the deen is saying. And I challenge any brother to come and say anything separate, say no, there's no rape in Islam. So Sister Haniya, sorry I interjected, but that very, very important point, I don't hear anyone talking about it. I don't hear brothers saying no, this is not the case. There's a silence when that is brought. No sister should be subjected to forceful intercourse where she does not consent, and then the hadith is used, you are going to be cursed. This should not be used in that particular instance ever.
No, it shouldn't. And it's sad that it is, and whether, you know, within the whole Muslim community, it's a reality that it is, but it's sad. And creating more awareness like this, alhamdulillah, is a great thing. The thing, I'll bring it back to the reverts though. The thing with the reverts though is we have this need though of wanting love, because again, we've possibly been rejected by in the entire family, and we are sort of, we've become a wife for the first time. We've become a mum for the first time. We've become a daughter-in-law for the first time. We dress completely differently. We're eating different things. We're not going to the clubs anymore. We're going to the masjid. We're trying to learn Arabic all of a sudden. You know, every little thing about us, our names have changed. We've changed our names. You know, everything. We're trying to learn the deen and implement the deen. Everything about us has changed. So when we marry a person and our whole life has been really given to this person, we really want their love, we want their acceptance, and we want to be the perfect Muslim wife. So we accept it. And I see it, like I said, by the way, I'm not speaking from, you know, necessarily my just my own experience. I'm talking hopefully as a voice for reverts. This is what I'm trying to do every time I speak on any webinar. It's a voice for all revert sisters. We see it time and time again that we're taken advantage of, that need that we have to have a family, to have a husband, is taken advantage of. And that's what's sad. And this is where I was asking Brother Abdul Haqq, look, what can we do? Because these sisters, they need someone to turn to. They need a wali, they need a wakil, they need someone to guide them in the right direction and say, look, actually this isn't acceptable, and we need someone to go and talk to that brother and say, you know what you're doing is wrong. We might have a female friend, or we might have like a sister or a female cousin or something, but it doesn't work. It's not the same impact. We might have a non-Muslim family relative, like a male figure, come to the husband and say something, but it has no effect. What we need are figures from the community, strong brothers that say, you know what, this is our sister, you can't treat her like that. And we need preventative measures in the first place. Like, I feel like there has to be some sort of a course to say, look, if you're going to marry a revert, and the same for the male reverts as well, if you're going to marry a revert, this is what you need to know. This is what to expect. And do a character test on him or something and say, look, are you emotionally strong enough yourself to marry this sister? Are you ready to accept that she might feel lonely and sad at times? Can you pick her up? Or are you going to be honest with yourself? Have you got your own insecurities that you're going to then take it out on her and basically, you know, put her through unnecessary hardship? I'm not putting people off marrying reverts, because I genuinely also feel that reverts can be the strongest Muslims because of all this. And our iman tends to be extremely strong. So I'm not putting people off marrying reverts, but I do think we need some sort of preventative measure.
Jazakallah khair, mashallah, subhanallah. There's so much to unpick there, given the time that we have. just want to quickly say salam to Sister Talk and to Jenna, Jazakallah khair. And Sister Katten, I believe Sister, is saying, how can we get in touch with Reverts and help them? So with your with this organization, Revert Voices, you give them a space to do that. And then do you have where you partner them up with people? Is there kind of circles within the circles that you provide that support for them?
So Revert Voices actually only started on the day that I launched that webinar. So it's very new, but we are developing it, alhamdulillah. And what we're doing so far, we're planning on creating that awareness. So we want to do webinars for white Reverts in particular, because their battles are different to Asian women, for example. And then we want to look at the difficulties that Black Reverts face. So we're doing this campaign to raise awareness first. We're also having opening up to people's writing, which I'm trying to collect as well, like an anthology. But yeah, so we're doing a lot of signposting. So if someone wants to know, I know there's a sister online asking how we can help Reverts. We signpost. So at Revert Voices, I can say to you, look, contact places like IERA, Islam-wise, contact myself. My email address is available widely. Haniya.Aadam@men.org.uk. So because I tend to mentor people as well, but also Solace UK is a place where we always refer people to as well. Solace UK, counselling service for sisters. So there are plenty of places. Your local masjid, I'm sure, will be doing something for Reverts. If they're not, why not start your own initiative? Coffee mornings or something. We are hoping to become more active once this whole COVID thing has settled, but inshallah, if you look out on the MEND website, you'll see a lot more of our work coming up, inshallah.
Inshallah. Just wanted to Lala Rock, just saying that mashallah, you made some good points there, and Sister Talk, subhanallah, may Allah protect the ummah, ameen ya Rab. Afsad asking what faith you were before you became Muslim.
So I came from a Sikh background, and I have to be honest with you, alhamdulillah, I loved my upbringing. I had an amazing upbringing. I think I was quite spiritual, so I loved going to the Gurdwara. I loved going to the Golden Temple. I loved going to the Hindu ashrams in the Himalayas. I loved all of it. I loved my journey into Islam, to be honest with you. And alhamdulillah, the best thing that's ever happened to me is that I found my true religion, and I found the root of what it was that I was searching for, and that was alhamdulillah, Islam.
Alhamdulillah. There was something that was said a bit earlier. I just wanted to unpick that. You touched on it, Sister Haniya, and Abdul Haqq touched on it as well, is that Dr. Abdul Haqq touched on it from a male perspective, of that when you become Muslim, there's kind of this, the pathway is kind of there. But and like you said, you know, when you have somebody in the office, you know, Muslim sister, she starts to wear the hijab, people are kind of aware that she's Muslim already. So when you took on that faith, you know, and like you said, you know, there was a lot around, you know, the way your family responded, but also like in the workplace, what was that like for you, and what was that whole transition like for you, sister?
So me personally, when I first told my work colleagues that I've become Muslim, to be honest, I had only known them for about a year. But there was like this whole, are you sure? Is that what you want to do? But when it came to the sort of Asians that I worked with, I was reluctant to tell them because I was actually scared. Because there is this thing within the Sikh Hindu kind of community where if a girl becomes Muslim, they'll either try and kill the man that caused it or lock the girl up that became Muslim, or drag her to India and get her married, or whatever it is. So I had to keep it secret for a long time. When it came to me, after I think it's about 3 or 4 months of becoming Muslim, I was ready to wear my hijab. So I didn't feel like I could do it in the workplace because I was surrounded by people that I thought were definitely not going to take that very well. So I actually left work and then put on my hijab. I think that was the right thing to do. Alhamdulillah, I'm happy that it happened that way because it gave me the confidence to wear my hijab. which was one of the hardest things I ever did when becoming Muslim. Everything else was easy. I learnt my Salah in like 2 weeks. I was supposed to do my quills all within 2 weeks. But the hijab took about 3 months. So probably a little bit longer. I think I started, okay, hijab to the masjid, hijab to like city center was like, no, not yet. But alhamdulillah, within some months, yeah. But it was a shock to the system. It was very obvious that I was Muslim. So all of a sudden, from not observing people, I became to, observe people. How are they looking at me? What do they think of me? And, I felt like I needed to be extra polite to people so they didn't think I was some oppressed Muslim woman. So all of a sudden, I'm being like extra polite and extra thank yous and extra smiles because I'm wearing a hijab. And I know all the stereotypes of women who wear a hijab, like they're sad, they're miserable, they're DV, they're this, they're that. They can't speak English. So I felt like I became more talkative, more smiling. And, the hijab thing's a long story. I could talk for another hour just about the hijab.
Oh, alhamdulillah. I mean, to be honest with you, Dr. Abdul Haqq and I have been having these discussions, and it really is it's a breath of fresh air to have a sister on. With all due respect to Dr. Abdul Haqq, we've had this really in-depth discussions about these things, but I think it's about really understanding, like you said, where that's coming from, because you're talking about really, like if you look at every part of your identity, it's completely shifted. Like you said, even to your name being changed, name that a loving family chose for you, that's been changed. So all of that facets of your identity have been pushed back, and you've embraced this deen. And as you've embraced this deen, sadly, some of those people around you who should also be embracing the deen in a similar way haven't done so. And so that there's a lot of conflict in there to begin with, never mind the additional barriers and difficulties that get put upon us, put upon you.
Can I come in on that? I think there's, and you're absolutely right. But to add and support what Sister Haniya is saying, first and foremost, okay, names have to be changed if they're contradictory to the essence of Islam, but that's not something that's a prerequisite, as some of us are not actually told that when we become Muslim. But that's a side point, but a significant one that needs to be made. But also what I think needs to be looked at is that when we come to the deen, let's look at this. If a celebrity came to the deen, scaffolding and apparatus are put around him or her, and they are feted and they are looked after and they are championed and everything like that. And that's almost continuous. Okay. When a baby comes into the world, they've got all of the support and secure things. And we're not saying we're babies, but you've got all that support network around them. When we take our Shahada, we're told that we are as fresh and newborn as a baby, sinless, everything like that. And then we're left out to dry. Okay, to struggle and find our way. And okay, as brothers, we will do that by and large, but with the sisters, there needs to be a mechanism or a procedure or processes where there are networks and there are apparatus put around her so she can feel secure. So when she moves in one direction, like for example, my ex-wife and I, when I think it was a Sikh Revert as well, and she was well-to-do, like many of you are, and her parents felt she'd gone into a cult, and she needed somewhere to be instead of being in isolation. And yet she was yet another sister who came and lived. We had a spare room on the top floor, and she stayed with us. She learnt the deen. She was welcome. My wife looked after her. And then the parents wanted to start coming to see her, and we allowed them. We said, please come, feel free. So they came in, they saw her, they saw that we weren't these mad extremists and everything like that. They saw that I'm educated, my ex-wife was educated, normal children. But then they got an expert, some cult expert, white English individual. They paid for him to come and said, look, can we have a meeting with you, Dr. Abdul Haqq, and can we sit with you? And we want our daughter there, and he wants to sit. And we did. We went to some neutral place, and we sat, and he was asking questions, talking away, listening to her. And I wasn't having any eye contact with her. She's an intelligent lady. The sister was intelligent, speaking of her own accord. And we had a few meetings like that. And the parents saw that the daughter really had embraced of her own accord, why she wanted to embrace. They saw that literally all we were doing was providing shelter to her and some religious instruction as she wanted. She was not being inculcated, brainwashed and everything. But the thing was, just out of a family support network, we said she's a convert, and that's the only reason we're saying, look, if she wants to be, she's free to go when she wants to. But the point I'm making is that it doesn't have to be any organization. And unfortunately, there are not enough organizations even doing that. We need the Muslim communities to really understand when we are saying we want to give dawah to people, we want them to come to Islam, and we start showing off and boasting about the amount of shahadas, Islam's the fastest growing religion in the world. These are just statements. These are just platitudes. Where is the action now to take those converts in? Where is the action where some sisters come around and say, Sister Haniya, you're a new Muslim. Here are my numbers. We want to start meeting you. This is what we do. Come sit with us, relax, everything. Oh, do you need someone to speak to your parents? Let us go with you to speak to your mother and have a discussion. We'll call our husbands to come and speak to your father. They may not accept that, but they will see there's this community there that has taken in this sister. This is not happening. Convert communities were doing that, like the Brixton community, but other communities were not doing that. And I think that is what needs to take place. And I'd like to see that really start growing and be revived in a larger way than it was in the 90s in 2021, inshallah.
I think that's a brilliant idea. I really do. My husband now, the first thing he did was go to my mum's house, and it was so brave of him. She didn't want to see him. She didn't want anything to do with him. But he went regardless and asked for my hand in marriage. And she said no. She said, she wants nothing to do with, any of it. But the point is, he made that first step. And, alhamdulillah, I think personally, it made a huge difference on her because she was able to vent, and she vented. She said everything to him, complete stranger. But I think it helped. And, in hindsight, I think had I done that for the 10 years previous, maybe things would have been different. I'm not sure, Allahu Alam, but alhamdulillah, I think it's a really good idea. I think if the person marrying this sister, or close friends, we keep talking about marriage, but let's say if it was a close friend, a close Muslim friend, or someone from the masjid reached out to that family and said, look, we're looking after her. I think as a mother, my main concern, and now I understand my mom's main concern, is she being looked after? And I feel like, it is a genuine concern they have. Is she an extremist? Are we going to see her like in ISIS or something, So to help our families just understand that, we're okay, that we're being looked after, and we're not, these extremists and stuff. And for it to come from a member of the community or husband or whoever, I think would make a huge difference. And just, for them to just say, look, we know you're not talking to her right now, but here's my number. So if you want to know if she's okay, you can contact me. Like, why we should set something like that up, I think.
And I think, for example, what we used to do, and my mother knew Muslims. She's from South America, from Guyana, and she would come to Eid gatherings and get to know the sisters. She's the matriarch of the family, so she's very strong. And they would see how she was with me, like speaking to me like I was still like a 12-year-old boy or whatever, and just see, wow, this is how she talks to her son. And they saw the relationship there, and she saw the interaction. My late grandmother used to come to the mosque, non-Muslim, and she'd say, I've cooked for Anthony, as she called me, and here is some of it for you Muslims, and it's fish, and I know you can eat fish and everything like that. We had community dinners. I enacted those in the 90s, where we'd open up and say, like, bring your non-Muslim friends, bring your non-Muslim families to see what's taking place, and they would come and they would sit. Some would get used to, okay, we have to take our shoes off in the mosque, would explain like specific cleanliness and everything. Some of the sisters who were getting married, they would say, Mum, I want you to come, Dad, uncles. And you would see in our community, you see a whole lot of non-Muslims there and the Muslims there. Even the janazas that were taking place because of the gang violence and things that were taking place in South London. And you would see, we'd go to those families and they say, yes, they died Muslim, explain the Muslim burial process to us. They'd explain it. I said, look, we want you to come. They would come to the ceremonies. They'd be at the graveyard. There'd be exhortations about the afterlife and things like this. And these were very sensitive moments. Marriage, as we know, and death and funerals for all walks of life and religions are very significant moments of time, as are births. As well, when you're having, they say christenings in Christianity, and we have the aqiqahs. These are moments when the Muslim community should be showing the support, even if it's not the sister's child, even if it's not the sister's wedding, even if it's not the sister's death, but bringing these family members, bringing non-Muslims to say, look, come and share in this with us, because we are from this society together. This is how we do things, and we want you to be familiar with that. And that not only do they see similarities between their own faiths or walks of life, they see these are normal people who grieve like us, who have values similar to ours. They're just doing things differently according to their faith in that instance. And our daughter, our son, is part of that now. And as my mum said, she said, you're more spiritual. And she said, at least I know you're going to live past 30. She didn't think I'd reach 30 because of the lifestyle that I was living. But she said, I'm glad that you've become a Muslim after seeing and knowing the lifestyle of the Muslim faith. And as Haniya said, to know that you're not becoming extreme, to know that there are those who are tempering if you're going too fast in the religion, to actually say, yeah, she's going a bit too far. We're speaking to her. Don't worry about it. And Haniya, we spoke to your mum. So she see, hold on. There is an alignment with the family in concerns of extremism, in concerns of being over fanatical. But if that's not being done as a support for the sister in particular, then she's been left to her own devices. And again, I'm going to use that term. There are predators among us. There are predators. There are cases of paedophilia that happens with stepchildren, and these things happen, and we need to ensure that those sisters are protected, supported, and that anybody coming in with any ill design knows there are consequences. And again, as I put it out openly, whatever level it needs to be at.
Just wanted to ask you, Sister Haniya, have you heard of, being from Newcastle Fast FM? Newcastle Fast FM was a project that was set up by IDC. I don't know if you've heard of IDC in Newcastle. That they do have a Revert support program, and mashallah, it's. I mean, you're talking about two cities which are very diverse in their communities. Here in Newcastle, it's not so diverse. So there's the challenges and the difficulties can become more acute and more specific in certain ways. But there are, I would certainly say, get in touch with IDC. They'll be more than happy to share with you their working practices and how they do things, mashallah. But I know because we do fundraising during Ramadan for the Revert support projects. And a lot of the Revert sisters and brothers, mashallah, they thrive under that program, mashallah, and they do the best they can. But again, I'm talking from very much a point of privilege, very much a point of being born Muslim. And I think, there was something you said upon that sometimes as born Muslims, we don't quite appreciate what we're blessed with. Firstly, having the deen. And secondly, having a family that's also upon that deen. So there's none of that conflict is there, none of that difficulty, none of those challenges are there. And I think what you're highlighting is that it is to at least give people that understanding of what actually happens when somebody comes into this deen, and having all of those tripwires that are just constantly there. Somebody just put in there, her sister is similar to mine. My Russian family did the same thing to me, but at the end you become a ghuraba, a stranger, and you have to be strong for the ummah to help you. And yeah, inshallah, alhamdulillah, you know, it's very, very different. Now, some of the work that you've said, Sister Haniya, is around with MEND. So with kind of, I know you're just starting off with Revert Voices. Where's your sort of your next step, and what sort of progress, inshallah ta'ala, are you looking to make over the next few months, inshallah?
Inshallah, we have a couple of webinars coming up then. So like I said, we're segmenting it to white reverts, Asian, sort of Indian reverts, and then black reverts. So we've got those webinars coming up. We have writing projects. So I really, really would like people to write to me and share their experience. Haniya.Aadam@men.org.uk. So we're hoping to have this published either on website or actually as an anthology. We're also looking to set up a central platform where people can type in or search for Revert activities that are happening within their local area. So you mentioned IDC. I have heard of them. Amazing. I've met a couple of people from there as well. They're amazing set of brothers and sisters doing great work. But not everyone has heard of IDC. Not everyone's heard of Islamwise in Birmingham. So I think we need a central place, and that's what we're working on at Revert Voices, where you can just search on the website and all your local activities and groups that support Reverts will come up. That's one thing. I think long term, where do I want to take this? I want on the ground support for Reverts. I think I need to work closer with Brother Abdul Haqq and get some of these projects that we're talking about actually up and running, where we have this sort of wakil service reaching out to families. Because again, what is our aim here? What are our objectives? Is to reduce the vulnerability of a revert, because alhamdulillah, I don't see us as victims, because our iman grows, alhamdulillah. We become strong in our deen, alhamdulillah. Whatever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has taken away from us, be it our families or careers or whatever, Allah's replaced with something far greater, which is Islam. And the opportunity to be close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and the opportunity to gain Jannah. So there's no, we're not victims in a sense. But what we do need to do is, eliminate this unnecessary hardship of whether it's DV or just extreme loneliness. Reverts become really lonely, and sometimes they do actually end up leaving Islam as well. So I want to do on the ground work. So I'm open to ideas, suggestions, working with other organizations to say, look, what can we do? And I think that reaching out to the family is really important, like a mediation service. I think creating more awareness of DV is really important. And I think awareness in the born Muslim community on how to support reverts. And it's really simple. How do you support a revert? You listen, you talk, you socialize, you give, education to that revert on all sorts of marriage life, talk openly about things like intimacy or whatever it may be, and that's how you support a revert. But the hardest thing for people to give is their time.
Also, if I can add to that, Haniya, Jazakallah khair. I think, Wajid, we've spoken about this. I've spoken about it academically. I've spoken about it in layman's terms. We need to also show reverts the stages of development they're going to go through. I've talked about that theoretical framework I developed. I tested it. So many have come to me internationally and said, we get this. And it's not rocket science. In conversion theory, we see that those rudimentary founding phases, many converts go through, and they need to know they're going through it. They need to understand they're going through these stages, and that it will be met with times of alienation, loneliness. You're reshifting and reshaping the paradigms in which you've lived and trying to make sense of the world, idealism, abstract understandings, until you start growing. If we don't show each other that, then converts are going to continue to struggle. This is not only peculiar to converts, Muslims who are coming back to their faith and everything. And I want to quickly say, I'm glad the email contact for Sister Haniya has been put up there. I want to ask Hassan to put up what these other sisters are doing, this other group is doing. And Sister Haniya, I'll give you details of that as well. And it's called Here to Here. And you'll see, it briefly mentions Dr. Abdul Haqq and co are supporting it. In the same way that I'm happy to support Sister Haniya, and you'll see the number there that's been given is for sisters to contact, not brothers, for sisters to contact. And then what will happen if there's male support that's needed, they will direct you to me, and then I will look at networking with brothers, not giving out your details to brothers, but then proceeding according to our capabilities. You can take that down now, Hassan. Jazakallah khair. You proceeding as we can in whatever way. If it means contacting the male individual, the organization with which you're having challenges with, and this is what I'm doing at the moment. Some sisters have come, I don't know how many WhatsApp groups now, but it might be 1 or 2 sisters who've come in and want to speak confidentially. I haven't brought any brothers in because the sisters have come directly, and I said, right, I've contacted brothers, I've got a case here, I'm going to update you. This is the step that we need to do. These are the steps we need to do. It might be a telephone call. Excuse me, we're representing the sister. And I've seen that that's changed brothers' paradigms. Like, oh, now there's male representation behind this sister. We need to do things differently now. Because before then, it was the sister on her own. And sisters were being marginalized by communities. There would be patriarchy at the least, misogyny at the most. And the sister's voice is just shut and drowned out completely. And she's the one who's stigmatized. And I've seen that too many times. You know, she becomes the one, she's the blameworthy one, when in actuality, in these cases, she is the victim. And picking up on a quick thing that wasn't posted up there, what about the sisters who cry wolf? Again, I referred to the person who raised that didn't come up publicly, came up privately to me. Please go back to the podcast that Wajid and I did, where we spoke about that directly, specifically, where men are victims too. Okay, in a minority of cases, however, in a minority of cases, it does exist. It does exist, but the minority where some sisters will use the system and use those trigger words to get the social services, the police, the security services, even the counter extremism units to come in, because she will use particular words because she wants to punish this individual, she wants to stigmatize this individual, she wants to harm this individual. But that's rare. The preponderance is the abuse of women, convert women getting it in a more acute way, because as Haniya has mentioned, our sister Haniya has mentioned earlier on, she doesn't have that male support or even female support to push back against the abuse that is being that's targeting her. And before I would say the last thing I would ask now, you're in the UK, Tier 4 has just been implemented, and we're coming to the end of 2020. Brothers, sisters, how many of you have thought about convert Muslims who do not have contact since they've been unable to go to the Islamic Center and or the mosque? How many of you have reached out to those sisters, to those brothers who may be in a non-Muslim environment, and while it might not be a bad environment, it's not the religious environment that they want to be in, okay? So Christmas being celebrated, alcohol being drunk, they're not able to get out in that particular instance there. Or worse, they're in an abusive relationship and their voice is even more muted than before because they are being watched and monitored by these husbands who are making sure that they are being that devout, obedient wife, cooking the dinner, being subservient to the husband and not saying boo in any instance. I know cases like that. Are we looking out for them? Are we showing sensitivities in messaging them, making a visible presence there by contacting them, so the husband knows there's a sister ringing, there is a voice that is communicating with that sister. And if that sister's unable to respond, that steps are being taken to ask the husband, Oh, my wife hasn't been able to speak to your wife. Is everything okay? Another sister's a husband ringing. Brother, is everything okay? My sisters, they're worried. They can't even get her on WhatsApp. They haven't been able to speak to her on the phone. Is she okay? Do we need to come around? I know there's lockdown, but can we get her on Zoom? We want to speak to her. My wife wants to speak to her. And if the brothers sort of just, no, everything's fine, everything's fine, everything's right. Brother, is there anything that's going on that you want to talk to us about? We need to know, because my wife is saying it's unlike your wife to be out of contact like this. So I'm asking you now, is something up? You need to tell us. And if there is, let's talk about it. If there is, and we determine that there is, understand we are going to get more involved, because now we need to look at our sister and make sure that she's safe. That's usually met with a very negative response, often threats of violence. Again, if it needs to go there to make sure the sister is safe, then, as the common phrase and parlance is, it is what it is. But we need to be prepared to go there, because the sister's mental well-being, physical well-being, spiritual well-being is of essence. And we are not looking at that, and people are suffering. Trust me, people are suffering.
Astaghfirullah, Jazakallah khair. I think we're heading towards the end of our time. I just want to say wa alaikum assalam to Jordan. There was a couple of things you touched on, sister, and I think they're really, really important. And I think you said about, that because each area is completely different. And as I mentioned about IDC, but they only work in a certain area because they know that area. And I know, good to see you too, Brother Jordan, that, when you know your locality, you kind of know how it works. And I think that, kind of what you're talking about through the Revert voices, you mentioned counseling, and you also mentioned, setting up that kind of support system. Let's say the local Islamic center or the mosque isn't doing something like this. Okay, that's fine. How do you go about setting something up like this? And I think Revert voices supporting that sort of a national initiative of having people on the ground of that area who can really connect and understand where the issues are, how the issues are going to play out. Because I know we're British in that sense, but each area has its own unique kind of identity and footprint and how things culture is. So I think that sort of thing would be, I think, definitely something that you've touched on that would help to create that. And I think once people know that that's in the area as well, like Dr. Abdul Haqq is kind of pointing out, it'll make people think twice about what's going on, because they know there's that kind of thing. I don't know, but where people park their bikes, they put these signs up that say don't steal bikes, yeah. But they'll put up like there's a camera watching you. But they did a study where when they put a picture of eyes looking at people saying you're being watched, less bikes got stolen in that area compared to before. And it sounds really, really simple, but just like you said, like Haniya and you, Dr. Abdul Haqq, are saying that when somebody knows that support isn't there, that it takes a lot. It takes a real man to not abuse that situation. So, but just knowing that that's there, like I know, we're supposed to be fearing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? And I fall short plenty, and I'm sure we all have our struggles with it. But just knowing that support mechanism is available in your local area can in itself become a deterrent, if not going to the other side of that spectrum. So I think may Allah grant you ease with it, and allow you to flourish in this work. Jazakallah khair.
I mean, all of us, inshallah. Ameen. Jazakallah khair.
I'd like to ask.
So I think we're going to finish there, inshallah.
Yeah, I want so that everyone see that it is a time to listen to our sisters' voices. I want, for once, Sister Haniya to be the resounding voice before you close it down. And I
was just about to say that, bro. What are you doing to me, bro? I was going to say, Dr. Abdul Haqq, you got any last messages before Sister Haniya closes for us today, inshallah? Because I think it would only be appropriate. Like I said, it's a breath of fresh air. We're thinking on the same way. All right, okay, cool.
You know what?
Please, go ahead.
No, I'm actually going to ask if you can repeat your question. What because my daughter ended up walking in the room. You could just repeat that question.
That's all right. That's all right. Walaikum salam, Sister Shabnam. Thank you for joining us again. No, we were just saying that, subhanAllah, you know, it's really refreshing to have you on, Sister. I know myself, I've talked a lot in this, but it's been really good having you on and getting this perspective. And I think this definitely needs to continue and kind of grow in its own natural way. I just wanted to say that, Dr. Abdul Haqq, if you want to just give the sort of the penultimate message before Sister Haniya signs us off, inshallah, and then we'll
right.
I want to just say Jazakallah khair to our Sister Haniya and the other sisters, the sister who's running and started Here to Hear, all the other sisters. I want to say Jazakallah khair to those sisters whose voices have not been heard and who have been suffering in silence, to know that Allah is rewarding you for your patience, okay, and that help is at hand. You just need to, when you can, where you can, start reaching out to those. And if you cannot amplify your voice because there are sensitivities there are others who will do that discreetly, but to make sure that you are being represented, inshallah. And that's what I want to say, and then hand it on to Sister Haniya, who should have that resounding conclusion, inshallah.
No, I think, first of all, I think more of these webinars and talks, discussions are vital. I think the work that Brother Abdul Haqq is doing is so good. Honestly, I think if we had more of this work everywhere, brother, earlier you were saying if people know their eyes on them, there's a community, there's a network of brothers that will knock on your door, that will ask you how things are. I think, you know, maybe we'll start to see a shift in things. Revert Voices, please make dua for the project. Is something very new. It's been put at a halt because of the COVID situation, but it is growing. We'll get there, inshallah. My aim, and I ask for dua, is to represent Reverts the best way I can, and to create change for them. People say to me sometimes that, you know, why are we still talking about this? It's so common, just get on with things. You know, that's just life. We're tested. Allah puts us through a test. That's it. You just got to march on and get on with it. It's not like that, you know. You can go through something for like 10 years. You're in something, and all of a sudden it hits you that this shouldn't be going on. And you're shattered. You're at a point where you're absolutely broken to pieces. And to lift yourself from the tiny pieces that you're in is so hard. And then it takes like all your friends. I had personally, I'll be honest with you, I had 2 amazing counselors at the same time for about a year and a half. And alhamdulillah, I was blessed in that. I was blessed that I was active at Green Lane Masjid, but not everyone is social. Not everyone has access to an amazing set of counselors and a masjid. And that this is where we have to find, what I want to do is, how can I make sure every sister has access to that? How can I make sure that, you know, sisters aren't broken to tiny pieces and then we're picking them up from tiny pieces? What we want is to prevent in the first place, inshallah. And we can do this through the awareness, through the discussions, through plenty of maybe training or, you know, mentoring and so on, inshallah. If there are any organizations out there that would like mentoring or would like, you know, discussions in their masjid, then I am more than happy to go to any masjid and to talk about this, to go to any masjid and help them set up something for Revert. So, you know, you have my email address. If there's anything I can do personally, then I'd be more than willing to, inshallah. But other than that, we ask for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's protection. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us the wisdom to deal with these matters in the best way possible and keep our intentions pure, inshallah, and let us be a contribution to a strong ummah, inshallah.
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 Okay, so I think we'll finish on that. Just want to say Jazakallah khair for all of you tuning in. Thank you very much for your time this evening, Sister Haniya. It's always a pleasure, Dr. Abdul Haqq, Jazakallah khair, and all of our sisters who've been involved in the discussion, and the brothers as well, inshallah. I hope it's resonated with you. I hope it's inspired something in you. Do get in touch as appropriate. And inshallah ta'ala, we will see you next Monday, inshallah. Subhanallah, bihamdik, ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, ant astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.